Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. This is Saturday. That means we're going to be getting into the first episode for special selections for the weekend. Today's selection comes at us from Carmelo Jaramillo. Says the song that I would like you to check out is 1919 by Danger. I don't know anything about this, but this cover art here, it's something. It's got a nice eerie vibe to it. It also looks like from the description box we have some Asian symbols. I'm not sure what language that's in, so I'm not going to take a guess. But I'm kind of figuring the song's not going to be in English. So I guess that's a little bit that's going to help me get into the right mindset for this. All right, let's dive in and see what's up. Ooh. That little glitch on like the 16th left in the bar. Almost like a grace glitch. A grace note glitch. I like it. Ooh. Lots of textural diversity. Yeah, filled in the back end a bit with that wide synth, and then allowed most of the song to quiet down. Got some texture layering there on that melody line. I do like that little bit of structural DNA tying everything together with those sparse transitions. A lot of the transitions are handled by pulling things back. Bit of detuning there. That is a very razor focused tone. See, pulled it back when we moved into the next section. Nice little transition there. A little bit of foreshadowing and a fade through. Yeah, a little bit of previous and what's coming up combined together into a nice little idea there. And again, another transition that fades to nothing before bringing in the next idea. Yeah. So there's this implied dyad going on between the pedal note and the that low wide synth. Those little moments of pause. interesting how often the song goes with a very heavy-handed downbeat approach as far as the percussive elements, but still applies enough of the like embellishments and little ornamentations that allow for the percussion to be more than that, and so that we don't get this really heavy dragging feel. Allows the percussion to still apply some drive to the song, even though majority of the time we're really looking at four on the floor. Which is a phrase about 4/4 time signature with every downbeat being emphasized. Four on the floor. All right. So I wasn't wrong about that song not having English lyrics. I was off though. That is an instrumental track, and it is techno, electronica, industrial maybe, just based on the timbres. There's a lot of really cool nuances going on in there. The individual sections, they worked. They all had that really strong downbeat emphasis that makes it very danceable, I suppose. You just kind of want to nod your head to it. There's just that real strong rhythmic element. I guess technically you would call it a groove, but I would not say it's a groovy song. It just has a real strong sense of rhythmic time. And of course, that's the four on the floor working for you. That's going to make it dancey. It's going to make it perfect for a club song, especially with so much bass and oomph coming out of those the rhythmic downbeat attacks. It's perfect for a club environment just from that. But when we look at some of the melodic lines and elements that are being utilized above the rhythmic elements in the percussion, we see some really cool things popping up here and there. The first thing that kind of stands out to me is how often we move around ideas. This is a 4-minute song with 4 to 5 different sections in it, which I think, well, at least it challenges my preconceived notions of electronica and dance music. I don't want to say that this song was created specifically to be danced to be played in a club. I'm sure that's not how Danger envisioned it, but it is how this music tends to get utilized, either as background music to do something else, to work or to study, or even just to chill, or used in a dancing setting, a club idea. So it is interesting to me that it moves so far. It almost has a couple of proggy elements in the way that it moves between sections, how many sections it has, and all of the different timbres that it uses. There's actually some really cool ideas in here as far as voice work. So it's, like I said, it kind of challenges my preconceived notions of how I typically understand this type of music to be, which is sitting in a pocket and being repetitive because it's designed to be put into the background. You're not designed to really listen to it per se. It is something to go along with something that's getting your actual focus, where the atmosphere and the beat are more important than melodic aspects or transitions or anything like that. Any sort of nuance is not the most important part, and there's actually seems to be a lot of import put on the nuance, the embellishments, musical ideas and melody lines, flow. There's some really cool things in here, so let's get into some of this. The first thing that stands out to me is the timbres for 100%. The voices used, the instruments used, the percussive element that really drives the low end, the floor. It's the foundation of the song, sets the stage for the entire track, and it's prevalent throughout. There's very few sections that don't feature these 2 or 3 specific sounds on the downbeat and a couple of embellishing ideas that represent the percussion, the metronome of the song. They're prevalent throughout. Everything else is open for change. We start out the song with some synth work, and even that synth work can be manipulated. We have down tuning, we have glitching to it. There's all sorts of little knob tweaks and little just digital effects applied to the voice itself to change the way it sounds. Another section utilized sort of a brassy, stringy kind of synth that seemed like it went after sort of a cello sound. Um, and again, it was modified in these little digital ways as well. There was another section that felt like it had sort of a more pinpoint synth rather than some of these wider ones that tend to get used for the melody. This was a bit of a narrower sound, a little brighter, but just the number of synth tones that get utilized throughout. Again, it's not an insane number. We're talking about 5 sections of the song, 5 voices that get used. We're not looking at some insane, 19 timbres being utilized, but it's still more than I'm used to. It's still more than I would expect. Let's say that the song defies my expectations in this manner. I kind of expect a single tone, a single timbre to be present throughout, and maybe the melodic ideas get changed up. But no, he uses a different voice for each section, and it gives it all a unique sound. The interesting thing is, though, is that with the foundation, that rhythmic downbeat work, being the same tone throughout, and the chord progression pretty much being the same throughout. I didn't really feel any sections that felt like they took chordal work in a new direction. The song kind of sat in one idea for 4 minutes. So that is pretty much what ties everything together. It's that cohesive DNA, the identity of the song, that makes sure it all feels cohesive at the end of the day. Even though we have all these different timbres being utilized for melodies, we have several different melodies being utilized, we have all these little embellishments, it all feels like it fits together because of the chord progressions and because we have this unifying sound throughout. Speaking of changing things, though, the melody was always changing, which I think is really cool. Again, goes against what I'm expecting. We had different voices, but each voice also had its own melody. This is basically 5 ideas on the same concept, or 5 concepts on the same idea. However you want to word it. We have the single foundation, the 4 on the floor with the chord. That is set in stone no matter which section we move to. But he still writes 5 different takes on that foundation and strings them together in interesting ways. This is where those little transitions come from. I mentioned that most of the transitions had a bit of a fade. It almost sounded crossfadey in some sections where you can hear one section leaving and the other section coming in, and they sort of overlap in the middle for a section before parting ways, and the original section's gone and the new section is in. And I mentioned that it was a bit of this concept of foreshadowing and introducing new concepts prior hand. So we have this idea of integrating some of the new ideas that are going to be popping up in, a bar beforehand, and we have some ideas of also utilizing the exact sound before it comes into play, the exact, timbre and melody line and everything, rather than taking an idea and implementing it into a different instrument, maybe taking a rhythm and putting it in the drum beat, a bar before the next section. We have both of these ideas. We have the foreshadowing, and we have starting a part early. And like I said, it feels like it's just a crossfade idea, but it works very well. And then we also have the volume drop that comes with it. And I think that is a really good way of smashing up 2 ideas back to back that are extremely similar. Like I said, the foundational work here is identical from start to finish. If the only thing really changing is your melody and maybe the accompaniment to the melody, this is a phenomenal way to provide a little bit of contrast to it all. You fade out everything. You kind of get rid of the foundational rhythmic work as well, and then you bring it back in with a punch on beat one, and you provide basically a palate cleanser in that bar of silence or the bar of sparseness. Usually, I think there was a couple of times where they had a note held out or something, maybe a super modified. I don't know how you would go about it, but you got this big wide bass kick, and then it's like boom, 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 boom. It's narrower, it's quieter, it doesn't have the punch to it. Whatever you would do to get that sound, and then warping it back out to its full self. It provides contrast. It's a palate cleanser for what's coming up next. You get back to that silence, to the core. You have a new point of reference, and you say, okay, what's coming next? And then instead of comparing it to what was before, which was of course 50% similar, you're comparing it to what was before, which is very different. It's quiet, it's silent. The width is gone. You've gotten rid of the instrument, so your layering's gone. Your vertical and your horizontal depth is missing. So when you compare it to, it's going to sound punchier. You're going to get that nice contrast that increases the dynamic aspects, but also, since it's not going to be as similar anymore as far as the foundational work, you're going to get the benefit of that as well. So yeah, really smart way of doing that. There was another transition thing that I was going to bring up. I think it only happened once, and I just left my brain on that one. I don't know. There is some really cool dyad work though going on. It was in that one section with the synth that sounded like a cello, and there was a quarter note synth also going on accompanying it. And it was really neat because it could have just held that note out and it would have created a very intentional dyad where you have the two notes. A dyad is just two notes, whereas a triad is three notes and a chord is usually four or more stacked. A dyad is just two notes played with each other. It's real simple. We have, a very implied dyad. You have these two notes going at the same time. But the cello section actually had a bit of movement to it. So we weren't getting these exact note changes on downbeats or every other downbeat if they were doing whole notes, or sorry, half notes. And the pedal tone was not a single note held out. It was actually four. And they had a bit of a cutoff on the, I don't know the audio term. It was a staccato note. A cutoff on the release. There we go. It was a staccato note though, which has a sharp hit and then a quick decline. It's not necessarily just like a bup, but you're definitely not holding it out for its full length. A bup would be a caret shape symbol. I typically call it an accent. I don't know if it has a technical musical term. I just call it an accented note. That is where you're usually just going to get the sharp attack. A staccato is a little period above, and it tells you that you need to play shorter than the full length of the note, but it doesn't need to be as short as an accent. And of course, they can be read different ways. Your conductor will tell you if you're playing them too long or too short, depending on how they envision the song to be or how they've heard it performed before. So there's a little bit of overlap between accents and staccatos, but for the most part, when we're talking with these notes here, they were shorter than their full length would imply, but they were not like stingers. I guess that's what I'm trying to convey here. So sometimes the notes in the pedal are going to change around the notes in the cello synth and when they change. So you don't necessarily have them changing at the same time to get these proper dyads, but there's an implied dyad because the pedal tone tends to stay on the same note within a bar. So there's some really cool dyad work going on there, and just some really cool textures coming out from the way that the different notes play off of each other, and the distances between them, creating different characteristics. There's nothing quite as rich as a triad or chordal work, but I think there's definitely something cool about. I love dyads. I do. There's something really cool about working with dyads. And I love hearing it in music. There's a sparseness to it that I think you can really pull out some cool ideas. And yeah, I liked what he was going for there. Had a little bit of a classical feel. He entered into some interesting relationships, but for the most part, it was rather safe and kind of stuck to some standard ideas. I did just want to point that out, though, just because, I mean, I do. I enjoy dyads. I think they get overlooked for especially power chords or triads usually. And then, chordal work is just, that's where the music's at. That's where you get the good stuff. And yeah, it's more complex. You can get some complex emotions out of it, but yeah, dyads just get overlooked a little, I think. Anyways, I'm rambling. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Danger 1919. It's a really interesting track. It goes against kind of what I expected based on its genre that I was introduced to in the first minute or so. I kind of thought I had it pegged. And yeah, it continued to surprise me with some interesting ideas. And I would not mind checking out some more. I don't know if it's necessarily something I would find myself listening to often, but as a little bit of more experimental, I guess, electronic music that has things that continue to keep me interested, I would not mind seeing another song or two and seeing how else Danger can keep songs evolving. I think that's the real big thing here, is that the song continues to evolve rather than stay static. But those are just my thoughts. This is where you guys come in. Now, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Danger 1919. If you enjoyed it or not, anything that particularly stuck out to you that maybe I didn't cover, go ahead and let me know. Above that, you can find the description box. There's a link in there for Linktree. Super nifty. It has everything in one place. Whether you want to join the Discord community, support me on Patreon, or just follow me on Twitter. Above that, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. All three of those things help out the channel immensely. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with our second special selection for the weekend before moving into next week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, but not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.